Welcome to the Human Nature Channel. I'm your host, Alex Tamsula, and what am I doing here? Well, it's Wednesday morning once again here at my dad's ever-enlivening farm garage. It also happens to be a beautiful summer night here in western Pennsylvania farm country. I've got both garage doors open. The circular thermometer is at about 70 degrees, but it's still so humid I decided to go practically shirtless. It's better this way. There is always something interesting here at my dad's garage. What can I show you tonight? Kind of speaks for itself, doesn't it? Yes, harvesting crops, old school. So, I think I have everything I need. I have my I accept tips button. Maybe I should wear it. I have a tape measure to be sure I measure up. Not only do I have a roll of masking tape, I have this roll's big brother. I have my pointer with a magnet on it. I've got a cigar for the Colombo close. And I have a pack of matches from the Jolly Rogue at San Simone, closest to Hearst Castle. An antique pack of matches because the striker strip is on the front. Ooh, that's living dangerously. Some Las Vegas shooting truth community news. Firstly, I want to express my gratitude to Concerned Citizen, part of my mastermind group, along with Eric Peters and Fawnspy. It was CC who set me straight on the bullet holes in room 32-135. While reading the FIT report, I got seriously confused. Officer O'Donnell was in room 32-135 when he flipped the switch on his rifle to 3-round bursts and it fired. As a pinned comment on my last video, I posted the conversation where I finally saw the light. Please check it out. I think this is interesting because the going back and forth with CC on our YouTube chat made me realize exactly where I went wrong. So I'm going to read the sentences from the FIT report that led me astray and why. When it comes to how badly worded and written the FIT report is, I think this drives the point home. In the timeline, it does state things clearly. I'm paraphrasing here, but at 23-26 hours after the explosive breach of the connecting door to 32-134, an LVMPD SWAT officer negligently fired a 3-round burst from his rifle. The rounds fired from the SWAT officer's rifle struck a chair, an entertainment center/cabinet, and a wall. Much to my chagrin, I missed seeing that sentence the first time through. That might have been the place where my eyes started to go crossed. But later, during the detailed overview, we get this verbatim description of events. SWAT officer Hancock breached the door. Immediately following the explosive breach, SWAT officer O'Donnell had an unintentional discharge of a 3-round burst from his rifle. Officers in the hallway heard the shots fired and broadcast shots had been fired inside the room. Officers flooded into room 32-134 through the breached adjoining connector door. When I first read those last two sentences, I thought the officers who radioed in shots fired were the ones who went flooding into room 32-134. The text read like they were reacting to shots from inside that room and were going to O'Donnell's aid. Not so. The officers in the first sentence are not the officers in the second. O'Donnell was in room 135 and was in the stack getting ready to go into 134. O'Donnell was one of the cops doing the flooding. When it comes to the last two sentences, I realized to my surprise the first sentence didn't have much to do with the second, despite both using the word officers. The Fit Report gets a D- from this English teacher. You made me look bad. Joking aside, I'm pondering a serious problem here. We'll return to the gun safety issue later on in our presentation. Secondly, I want to thank everybody who commented on my last video, number 26, the Unfit Report. I saw some new names: Belinda Nichols, Wagon 805, Pyramid 7. Welcome aboard, mates. And there were the hardcore fans: Eric Peters, Concerned Citizen, Fawn Spy, Pastor Mo, Mike Turber, JHHVAC and Plumbing, George Burns, Little Monster Pants, Truth Seeker, Aces Wild LV, Jeremiah Johnson, and of course Sean Smith, who turned me on to I Heard You Paint Houses by Charles Brandt, true crime reportage about Jimmy Hoffa and his close friend Frank, the Irishman Sheeran, who may have been instrumental in Hoffa's disappearance. I can't wait to find out if Jimmy is really buried under Section 107 of New York Giants Stadium. Also, a number of people chimed in with the possibility of Stephen Paddock having his organs or soft tissue procured after I mentioned that cryptic note in the Paddock autopsy included in the Fit Report. That was the notation about organ/tissue protocol being followed. Based on a link sent to me by my silent partner, I can say there is zero chance Paddock had any of his organs procured, because that has to be done at the moment of death. But soft tissue like bone marrow or heart valves, a 12-hour window on those. Stephen Paddock wouldn't be needing those corneas anymore. Plus, I tried to find a picture of Stephen Paddock's driver's license online just to see for myself if he had the organ donor designation. Nada. I'm an old guy, or at least AARP thinks so. I'm 62, and don't let my boyish enthusiasm fool you. I've been around a long time. I'm old enough to remember, going back 25 or 30 years or so, when you used to hear conservative pundits on TV talking about the marketplace of ideas. These pundits were inviting liberals into the debating process on issues. Today, you don't hear people talk about the marketplace of ideas anymore. We are deep into the age of the activist. The problem with activists is they really don't want to debate. They just want to lecture you on what you should care about, and that drives me crazy because I've always liked the idea of the marketplace of ideas. I miss it, and I don't necessarily see it as a right-wing or left-wing thing. It's just a forum. So, for my part, the Human Nature Channel's comments section is my way of keeping the marketplace of ideas alive. In the spirit of this marketplace, there are two YouTube channels by Las Vegas shooting investigators I'm paying a lot of attention to. Mike Turber's 5x5 News and Jen's Nothing If Not Intense. This shouldn't come as a surprise since I've mentioned them both. I like the work they do. I like the way they present their information about the Route 91 Harvest Festival massacre. I think they're good people who come across as real. They've had nice things to say about me, but beyond that, I think they both do their work in good faith. They give you an honest assessment of what they find. Considering how murky human nature can get, you can do worse. I mention Mike's and Nini's channels because they both could stand behind two separate theorems of what was happening inside room 32135 and 32134 on October 1st, 2017. The first theorem we could call Paddock the perpetrator theorem. This is definitely not a locked room mystery. When it comes to the question of whether anybody else was involved in the Las Vegas shooting besides Stephen Paddock, there's nothing we can hang on a hook that's decisive. What you see is what you get. Unless you've got something tangible, it's all speculation, and that goes for me too. Paddock murdered and maimed a bunch of people, then shot himself. He was pissed at the casinos because he thought they were cheating him. End of story. And a sense of almost airtight certainty that Stephen Paddock acted alone comes from his brother, Eric Paddock. To hear Eric's point of view, I recommend watching Mike Turber's excellent interview with him. Exclusive. Eric Paddock reveals new information about Stephen Paddock, FBI BAU. Watching Eric and Mike shred the Las Vegas Review panel report, also known as the FBI's three-pager, was pretty amusing. I also wanted to find out how Mike came to interview Eric Paddock. I won't spoil that. I'll just leave a link to the video in the notes below so you can find out for yourself. Watching this video was something I had wanted to do since reading Eric's statement about Stephen in the Fit Report. Eric told investigators he and Paddock were smarter than the majority of other people. Eric told investigators he was in Las Vegas to help and show how dumb you motherfuckers are, referring to law enforcement. Hey Eric, tell us what you really think. In the video interview at 40 minutes 51 seconds, Eric talks about Stephen having stayed many times at the Mandalay Bay Hotel in the rooms above and below room 32135, 6 floors worth. Stephen liked looking at the planes, Eric said. I guess he means the ones flying out of McCarran. Eric went on, I've stayed in those rooms many times. He said he had even stayed in that room. Eric also talked about owning the same type of hammer found in room 135. Eric said that when he learned they found Stephen was wearing blue gloves, the kind Steve bought all the time at Home Depot, Eric was sure Stephen was behind the shooting because Stephen always wore those types of gloves when working. These little things have convinced Eric that Stephen was the shooter and the shooter alone. Next, we get to the second theorem, which we could call Paddock the participant theorem, based on the assumption that everything we saw transpire on October 1st, 2017 in Las Vegas would only have happened if at least one other person was involved. And this is a locked room mystery. This is the theorem of cover-up, shifting timelines. A Nightline interview with Jesus Campos where it looks suspiciously like he's doing a recreation of getting on the service elevator, complete with grayed out timestamps in the CCTV video. It is here that I am bedeviled, and I'm sure I'm not alone, in trying to figure out how a second shooter in room 134 could have possibly escaped without being detected. This is where I really go out on a limb and say things like, the second shooter was a female of slim build who could get through the air vents into room 132. This is the weird place where the L-shaped bracket on the fire door could have been removed by somebody with the right tool in his tool belt, so the shooter could slip down the steps without any problem. Then our handyman replaces the L-shaped bracket on the door, creating the illusion nobody ever went through it. Who's going to know? Here we find Jesus Campos getting on his radio and saying, I've been shot in the leg with a pellet or a BB, a statement that goes out over the radio in classic mind virus meme fashion. When it comes to the Fit Report's fourth telling of Jesus' story, the authors make us understand in no uncertain terms that Jesus was actually shot in the leg with a bullet fragment, despite what you may have heard to the contrary. Yeah, like in the first 3 times the Fit Report told the Jesus story. And in keeping with the notion that the perpetrating of the Las Vegas shooting was bigger than any one person alone, Jesus' statement, "I've been shot in the leg with a pellet," could be a code phrase for "the cover-up is on." Anyway, getting back to Eric's interview, I will say I found him to be an interesting guy. He's obviously intelligent, as well as arch and sarcastic. He brought a dark sense of humor to the proceedings. Plus, if you watch him closely, you can see he's somebody who has devoted a lot of time to rehearsing what he wants to say. Mike Turber never tossed him a question that caught him off guard. Cool as a can of Freon, that Eric Paddock. Now, this isn't a bash Eric video. I actually came away with a certain level of sympathy for the guy. He could almost be a character out of a Jim Thompson novel. Thompson, the author of The Getaway and The Killer Inside Me and The Grifters. Thompson was kind of a neo-Freudian who seemed to think that deep down inside, all people really wanted was to be punished, which is a pretty good description of any plot in a Jim Thompson novel. But in the all too real world, Eric Paddock is a man who had a grandfather who was a bad guy, a father who was a bank robber and a bad guy, and a brother now acknowledged as the biggest mass murderer in American history. It wouldn't surprise me if Eric at some point said to himself, "What circle of hell is this?" But when it comes to Eric's certainty that Stephen acted alone, I did say almost airtight. That's because there is one thing in the interview with Eric that really jumped out at me. Eric engaged in his own theory of everything when it came to the how of the Las Vegas shooting, as in how did Stephen Paddock pull it all off. Eric would say, Steve was very good at whatever he wanted to be good at. In my video number 16, the Las Vegas shooting, We Be John Cullen, I talked about a theory of everything explaining the why behind Stephen Paddock's actions. Well, Stephen Paddock wasn't right in the head. Why did Stephen Paddock turn his guns on a crowd of people who had absolutely nothing to do with his problems? Well, Stephen Paddock wasn't right in the head. Why would a smart guy like Steve believe a mass shooting in Vegas to make the casinos famous, as Eric put it, would make the least bit of difference in the billion-dollar Vegas gaming industry's bottom line? Well, Steve wasn't right in the head. My problem with the theory of everything is it could turn into a mental trap, especially if it makes you pass over some ambiguous detail that might be important later. I watched the CHickenSHAck video posted by Brian Shields, where we see people running for their lives. You hear the crack of a rifle, and off to the right there is a woman on the move. You hear a second rifle report, and she falls. I would ask Eric, gee, how did Stephen get so good at being a sniper? Eric might say Steve was very good at whatever he wanted to be good at. I would remind Eric that in his interview with Mike Turber, he did say Stephen never fired his guns. It was Eric's kids who fired them. Eric had even held Steve's guns for a long while as Steve was in the process of moving into a new place. Yet somehow Stephen Paddock managed to get good enough to hit a moving target. I would say to Eric, when you put these things together, never firing his guns yet hitting a moving target, can you understand why people are skeptical that Stephen Paddock acted alone? So here we have our two theorems. Paddock as perpetrator or Paddock as participant. It's kind of like the old joke about the two guys in an insane asylum, both claiming to be Napoleon. One of them has got to be wrong. Anyway, let's go back to where I originally started, talking about SWAT Officer O'Donnell and his accidental 3-round burst inside room 32-135. I'd like to give you some background on my experience with firearms. Okay, Western Pennsylvania farm country. I grew up around guns, all kind of guns. Western Pennsylvania is the deer hunting capital of the world, I do believe. In my much younger days, I was doing target shooting. I was into the marksmanship of it all, and I did enjoy it a lot. I was a Boy Scout, and at summer camp there was a rifle range. I remember one time being at that range. I was already in a prone position and picked up the rifle before the instructor gave the okay. The instructor gave me a kick to the bottom of my shoe. Hey, gun safety is important. I was on the high school rifle team, shot 22s at targets. Years later, me and friends would go out into the boonies with our rifles and a case of beer and blast empty beer cans. I do like shooting. I also ran a sporting goods department in a department store for 5 years. I sold all types of different rifles and shotguns, so I know a little something about rifles. I even have an AR-15 that was put together over time from parts me and a friend would buy at gun shows. The idea being all AR-15 parts are interchangeable and you could build a gun that way. The most important purchase was the lower receiver because that's where the serial number is stamped. Unfortunately, the supposed interchangeability of AR-15 parts is not quite true. There are slight differences between the parts for AR-15s for civilians and tactical AR-15s for law enforcement. The gun I own fires 3 times in jams. I ended up with a $2,000 paperweight. One of these days, I'll get my rifle fixed, but my point is, I've been around even for the building of an AR-15. The problem I'm having with O'Donnell is one of simple gun safety. He could have accidentally killed any one of the officers around him. It doesn't seem to me O'Donnell ever got that all-important kick to the bottom of the shoe to always remind yourself to keep your head in the game with a loaded gun not on safe. I know Vegas is a resort town, boys, but you're not the ones on vacation. And now that I'm almost finished here, this is time where I get to do the Columbo close. One more question, Eric. Now, Stephen Paddock, as the Fit Report tells us, fired at the jet fuel storage tank with the .308 rifle from room 32-134. Even though it should have been like hitting the broadside of a barn, Sure Shot Steve fired something like 8 shots and only hit twice. Since this was not part of any escape plan, as Eric assures us, then it's simply part of the general plan to make the casinos famous for cheating Steve. Exploding those tanks with incendiary rounds was only meant to make the Las Vegas shooting more horrendous than it was already going to be. But Eric, you said Stephen liked to stay in those Mandalay Bay suites facing north because he liked to watch the planes take off from McCarran. And Steve was also a pilot. Stephen Paddock had to know something about airplane engines. He would have to know what the phrase fuel injection means. You would think he was aware that if you threw a lit cigarette into a jar of kerosene, nothing would happen. The fuel has to be atomized, mixed with the air. Put kerosene into a spray bottle and spritz it towards an open flame, and then you'll get your ignition. But that's the only way. You would think Stephen Paddock would know that firing bullets into a storage facility full of jet fuel isn't going to do anything. We're not talking about a can of gas with a spout on it here. We're talking a storage facility full of separate chambers designed to prevent just this type of conflagration. Whoever fired those rounds at the jet fuel storage tank didn't seem to know a goddamn thing about jet fuel storage tanks or the jet fuel inside them. Eric, does that sound like Steve to you? And the song, I Don't Want to Stop by Ozzy Osbourne. Have a good one. I don't know what they're talking about. I'm making my own decisions. This thing I found ain't gonna bring me down. I'm like a junkie without an addiction. Mama, don't cry, just wanna say hi. Like playing with danger and fear. Everybody's walking, but nobody's talking. It looks a lot better from here. All my life I've been over the top. I don't know what I'm doing. All I know is I don't want to stop. All fired up, I'm gonna go till I drop. You're either in or in the way. Don't make me, I don't want to stop. Why don't they ever listen to me? It's just a one-way conversation. Nothing they say is gonna set me free. Don't need no mental masturbation. Too many religions, but only one God. I don't need another savior. Don't try to change my mind. You know I'm one of a kind. Ain't gonna change my bad behavior. All my life I've been over the top. I don't know what I'm doing. All I know is I don't want to stop. All fired up, I'm gonna go till I drop. You're either in or in the way. Don't make me, I don't want to stop. All my life I've been over the top. I don't know what I'm doing. All I know is I don't want to stop. All fired up, I'm gonna go till I drop. You're either in or in the way. Don't make me, I don't want to stop. I don't want to stop. You really don't want to stop, do you? I don't want to stop. You don't really want to stop. I don't want to stop. All my life I've been over the top. I don't know what I'm doing. All I know is I don't want to stop. All fired up, I'm gonna go till I drop. You're either in or in the way. Don't make me, I don't want to stop. All my life I've been over the top. I don't know what I'm doing. All I know is I don't want to stop. All fired up, I'm gonna go till I drop. You're either in or in the way. Don't make me, I don't want to stop. Sharon! What is it, Ozzy? Later!